The next story is a spy thriller. It's about James Bondi, Special Agent Nickisy 7. The news was leaking out that the Rhodesians were building a hydraulic electro project across the Machumshlopi River in Bulawayo. Well, this was no good because if the scheme was completed, then they would never pay back the squaret for Kariba. So the authorities overseas decided to call in MI5. That's Maningindaba 5. And they sent James Bondi to put a Bobijan spanner in the works. Sometime later, James Bondi crossed the river. Unfortunately, when he was halfway across, somebody opened up the sluice gates from the dam upstream, and James Bondi came out 50 miles downstream. But undaunted, he assembled his collapsible mabaskol and headed in a northerly direction. After 15 minutes, he stopped because he remembered that Bulawayo was in a southerly direction. A few days later, he arrived in Bulawayo and went to the Jaburara Hotera, which has a 1.5-star rating. And there he had a bath, and he put on the eau de cologne, and then he dressed himself in his new lemon-colored suit, tailored especially by the House of Patel. And then he went to the Makaranga eating house, found a cubicle in the corner, and after studying the a la carte menu for some time, he ordered sadza and gravy. While he was eating, a hostess detached herself from the bar and slinked over to the cubicle. She smiled sweetly and said, "Mangwanani!"
What's your name, darling?
My name is Fanny. Fanny Galore. James Bondi gave her the twice over. She was very beautiful, with a lovely figure. 59, 47, 65. He said, "My name is Bondi, James Bondi." She gave him a paper packet. Inside was brown powder. "Ini law," said James Bondi. "Kabanga and a new kind plastic explosive to blow up the dam." "Ah, Ikona," she said. "This is instant beer. Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, you put the powder in the dam, and the sun will turn all the water into beer. The engineers will drink the beer, they will become sloshed, and they will be unable to finish the work. It's a very clever, these Chinese people. It's diabolical. And when you finished your work," she said, "come up to my flat and I'll show you my Bushman paintings." James Bondi crept along the wall until he came to the middle. But it was still 4 hours to go before 6 o'clock. So he climbed into a cement mixer and went to sleep, reminding himself to wake up at 5:45 a.m. At 5:30 a.m., the contractor switched on the cement mixer. And the next thing that Bondi knew, he was being thrown into a big hole, closely followed by 3 tons of liquid cement. The next day, MI5 received a telegram which read, "James Bondi is out of action. And if you want proof, we have concrete evidence." A friend of mine was a flying instructor during the war, and he was told to report to Eshawi in order to help train Zulus for the war effort. So he presented himself, and the very first day his lesson went something like this. "This is a very special fly machine which is called a Harvard Mark IIA two-seater. In the front is a propeller. Underneath is 2 wheels, and in the backside is a 1 tail wheel which is not fully retractable. Right, now climb up inside, I'll show you in the cockpit. When a bona and a kona maningi watches labo. Kabanga and a Swiss made, I'm not sure, but anyway. Every watch is telling you something. This one is airspeed indicator. Skatina figure up a red line, you're going to have an accident for sure. Manje skati unafunenza starting when I don't sell energizer switch. Nenza nyam 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 nyam. Manje unafaka lo engage nenza yup 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 yup. Kabanga lo battery and a flat. As you go down, tinenza starting fanikalo Model T Ford. Bambalo cranking handle. Gaia static manji. Tinenza footy nyam 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 nyam. Skatina figure up a blue note. Nyam 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 nyam. When it's engaged footy, it's yup 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 yup. We forgot to switch on the petrol. Right, manji tina vulalo petrol, tina Gaia footy. Manji lo Harvard inenza when agenza growling. Fanikalo tiger skatina puzelo melek. Manji, una bambalo long range walkie-talkie. When a bizalo bus laba control tower, lo bus Charlie. When a kruma ready for taxi, ipilo runway. Lo bus Charlie no kruma runway 180. In a kruma Roger. No, his name's not Roger, it's Charlie. Right, in a ready car taxi manch. But the engine is too big, you can't see where you're going. So, first when a fagalo left rudder, skatinamba so, you look to see where you're going, then you put the right rudder, skatinamba so, you look again to see where you're going. When a dinga mushilum gwagwal up front, right? Right, bura throttle bichana tinahamba. Paga left rudder, dinga mushi, pasopolo hanger. Paga right rudder, pasopolo hanger. Paga left rudder footy, dinga mushi, pasopolo hanger, ow! Buisa footy, Harvard Mark IIA. I would now like to tell you a fairy tale about Jack and the Millystalk. Once upon a time, there was a young fellow called Jack, who lived with his mother, Mrs. Chifumbe, at Chichilocho, which, as you know, is very close to Nyamanchlovu. And one day, Mrs. Chifumbe said to Jack, I want you to take the cow to the Cold Storage Commission. Sell it and bring back the money. So Jack, he took the mombi and set off. But he hadn't got very far when he came across a commercial traveler. And the commercial traveler said, "Ipo wena hamba na ro mombi." And Jack said, "I'm taking it to the Cold Storage Commission." And the commercial traveler said, "Ai kona. Lo mombi ena kono lo mouth and feet disease. Skate lo police ena bona wena, they'll put you in jail for sure. Better when a nigga mina lo mombi, I take it in the shatin, I get rid of the evidence, and in exchange you can have this handful of millies." Well, Jack was very grateful, and he ran all the way home. Mrs. Chifumbi was not very happy. She took the millies and threw them out the window and sent Jack to bed with no scoff. In the morning time, when Jack looked out of the window, there was a makulu milli stalk growing right up to the sky, right up to Cock Robin. Quickly he jumped out of the window and climbed up the milli stalk. When he got to the top, there was a big castle made from prefabricated asbestos. The door was open and Jack went in, down the passage to the dining room. But just then, a voice which belonged to a giant called Sky High Lee said, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the foot of Chifumbi's son." Jack was terrified and he hid under the table. The giant came in and he sat down to a big meal. But when he was finished eating, he took from the cupboard behind him a huku. And he put the huku on the table and said, "Lay." And the huku laid golden eggs, 12 at a time. Then the giant fell asleep, and Jack crept out from the table, grabbed the huku, and in a badak astele grab a front door. But the huku neza pak 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 pak. The giant in a vukiri na kuma iwe. Ipo wena hamba na ro huku kamina. Buye lapo. But Jack said, "No, futsek." And he ran to the milli stalk and climbed down. And the giant was following him. And when Jack got to the bottom, he took the circular saw and he cut down the milli stalk. And the giant fell down, 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 down into the compost heap. And Jack gave the huku to his mother, and they lived happily ever after. Because the moral of the story is, even if you are a cattle farmer, you must still diversify.